Do you ever feel like there's a battle in your head between your rationality and your emotions? Well, if that's so, you're not alone. And you haven't been alone for centuries. Ever since Plato, mainstream Western thinkers and scientists have depicted the dynamics inside our brain as a never ending battle between rational forces and other forces, often labeled animal, like emotions, instincts, sexual cravings, and other desires. Now, for some obscure reasons, desires for power, money, and success have never been labeled animal. But I'll leave that topic to another conversation. Now, for so many centuries, we've looked at that internal fight as a symbol of human supremacy over the rest of the sentient and insentient world. Until quite recently, we even used that argument to validate men's supremacy over women, considered to be too emotional. And even if many of us have now abandoned that belief, we still regard being too emotional as a flaw compared to living a fully rationally led life. And the general advice about how to handle your feelings responsibly ranges from ignore them to fight them, and by all means, hide them. It's not appropriate to show your emotions, particularly in public. And we often hesitate to share them even with friends or family, to the point that it can be frightening to acknowledge them even to ourselves. And the growing epidemic of loneliness and the rising suicidal rate are just an outcome of that. We've been so persuaded of this vision for so many centuries in the Western world that even neuroscientists, until the end of last century, would affirm that rationality resides in certain areas of the brain that are unique to humans, and would use a layered brain model similar to geological layers. A new layer equates to a new evolutionary step, a superior brain function, and as a consequence, a superior species. This idea has now been completely refuted by researchers for more than 2 decades, but is still in our language, our culture, and in lots of literature. Now, if you're listening to this blog, chances are that you've already started giving more room, a less secondary role, and more dignity to your emotions in your life. But equally, chances are that you're still struggling to accept and deal with them regularly, let alone honor your emotions as much as you do your rationality. And truth is, that's what we all should be doing. Now, the good news is that there's no war between emotions and rationality in our head. They don't even live in separate parts of the brain. Our highly evolved brain has not evolved to be a rational machine. And actually, there are many things it doesn't do well from a rationality point of view. For example, it massively favors perception over reality. It suffers from several well-known biases, like looking for all the facts that confirm an idea I already have in my mind, ignoring the evidence to the contrary, overestimating the impact of a future event on my happiness, whether positively or negatively, and many more biases. And I'll leave them to another conversation. The point now is that the ultimate function of our brain is not to be rational or to understand quantum mechanics. Rationality and intelligence are amazing tools, but are just some of the tools the brain has. The ultimate goal of the brain is to manage our body resources, predict what is the most efficient way to guarantee our survival, and act accordingly. Let's see a few examples, okay? So imagine you're up at night, making the last changes to the PowerPoint you need to present to your managers tomorrow. And you feel excited, and you have this anticipation in you, and probably coupled with thoughts you're hearing in your head, such as you can do it, tomorrow it'll be great, you'll crush them. And this excitement and anticipation are generated by your brain that, based on its previous experiences, predicts that those are the most effective emotions to push you through the night. Or you may be feeling terrified and fragile in that moment, and your thoughts are telling you, come on, you really need to get this done. Your boss will kill you tomorrow otherwise. In this case, your emotions are quite different, but the mechanism is the same. Your brain is triggering those emotions and those thoughts because it predicts, based on its previous experiences, that that's the best way to push you through the night. In either case, there's nothing irrational about those emotions. And to be honest, the whole mechanism sounds quite clever to me. Not only that, emotions are generally faster than thoughts, and they actually work like shortcuts. Imagine you suddenly found yourself in a dangerous situation. You felt scared, terrified, and found yourself running away well before your thoughts could even tell you why. And besides, you ran at a speed and with an energy you didn't even know you were capable of. All courtesy of your brain predicting, based on its previous experiences, that it needed to make adrenaline and lots of other body resources available for you to run fast in that moment. Fear was the shortcut mechanism for your brain to allow your fastest run ever. Now, what happens when the fear is such that you actually run away from the podium where you were supposed to deliver the presentation you've been working on for months and last night? Well, there's nothing irrational about that fear either. Your brain, based on its experiences and all the tools it developed in the past, predicted that keeping you off that podium was the best way to guarantee your survival. And there's also nothing irrational in you thinking that that wasn't necessarily the best outcome for your career. But denying, hiding, or suppressing that fear is not going to help your career. What will help you is to take that emotion seriously. Not literally, but seriously. And understand what tools and beliefs your brain has developed that have led you to shy away from that podium. And then work to equip your brain with more helpful tools and beliefs so that next time it'll predict and trigger a different, more career-friendly emotion. The very first step is to acknowledge and accept the emotions you're feeling. Acknowledging, as opposed to hiding and suppressing, that they're there, they're happening inside you. And accepting that your brain generated them based on a very rational prediction. So how do you do that? We always like to share some practical tools in our blogs at Wise Humanity. The tool I'd like to share here today is a simple and hence powerful awareness tool. We often lack emotional vocabulary to acknowledge and accept what we are feeling. We're not used to dealing with our emotions. When the emotion is unpleasant, we often feel overwhelmed by it, try to toughen up, suppress it, and move on. But even when the emotion is pleasant, we often fail to embrace it, allow and enjoy it. How many times have you felt happy, proud, confident, or valued, and then have immediately dampened that feeling down for fear that things could change? Or thinking that you didn't really deserve to feel that well? Now, we recommend using the emotional wheel, and you can find details in our blog. So several times a day, even hourly, pause what you're doing and observe what emotion you're feeling. Use the wheel to fine-tune your vocabulary and your understanding of yourself. Write that emotion down. And also write down what's actually happening, what factual situation you're going through, and how that emotion is influencing what you're doing and how you're doing it. And remind yourself that it's your brain using its tools and predicting that that's the best emotion for you to feel in that moment. How does this journaling work? So 6 a.m. I feel anxiety and irritation at the alarm going off. What's happening? Well, I'm waking up and getting ready. How am I doing it? I'm not connecting with my partner today. I'm actually hiding from the world behind my phone and my coffee. 7 a.m. I feel light and optimistic. What's happening? I'm walking the dog. How am I doing it? I'm walking with a spring in my step, taking an extra minute to play fetch and smiling and connecting with other dog owners around me. Notice how your emotions are influencing how you're doing things, not the other way around. 8 a.m. I'm slightly anxious again. What's happening? I'm driving to work. How am I doing it? I drove on autopilot, constantly worrying about today's work agenda, almost ran a stoplight, and so on. After a few days journaling, you'll have broadened your emotional vocabulary, boosted your self-acceptance, and enhanced your acceptance and respect of other people's emotions. On top of that, you'll have found patterns and repetitions in the emotions you've observed inside yourself. And if you find that any of them are not helping you, or helping your career, your self-realization, or in general, your emotion, your enjoyment of life, you'll know which ones you want to start working on first. And you can ask yourself, alone or with our help, what tools, beliefs, ideas does my brain hold that trigger those unhelpful emotions in those situations? And then you can work on equipping your brain in a way that works better for you. That's how you take your emotions seriously and responsibly. And get in touch if you want to continue this conversation. Thank you.